Alex was used to strange jobs. As a handyman, he traveled to different planets, fixing anything from broken doors to complex machines. But when he got a call from a faraway colony asking for urgent help, he knew this job was different. He arrived at the small, quiet colony late in the afternoon. The place was almost deserted, with just a few small houses scattered around and a thick forest nearby. The air felt still and heavy. Alex walked down a narrow path, following the directions he'd received, until he reached a simple house at the edge of the colony. He knocked on the door, and after a moment, it opened slightly. Two identical girls stood there, peering out at him. They looked about 16, with long dark hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to look right through him. "Are you Alex?" one of them asked in a quiet voice. "Yes, that's me," he replied, surprised by how serious they seemed. "And you must be the ones who need help." The other twin nodded. "I'm Lena," she said. "And I'm Lyra," the first twin added. They opened the door wider, inviting him inside. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, and there was an odd feeling in the air, as if the walls held secrets. Alex felt uneasy, but tried to brush it off. He was here for a job, and he was used to all sorts of strange places. Once he was seated, the twins sat across from him and watched him closely. Their eyes were sharp and focused, like they were studying him. Alex cleared his throat, feeling uncomfortable under their gaze. "So what needs fixing?" he asked, trying to break the silence. The twins exchanged a quick glance, then Lena spoke up. "We have 2 tasks for you," she said, "but there's one condition. You have to do both tasks at the same time," Lyra added, her voice soft but firm. Alex blinked, confused. "Both, at the same time? You mean with both hands?" The twins nodded in perfect sync. "Exactly," said Lena. "One task with your left hand and one with your right. Can you do that?" Alex thought about it. He had done some tricky jobs before, but this was new. "Well, I suppose I could try, but why do it this way?" The twins looked at each other, then back at him. "Because it's important," Lyra said simply. Her answer didn't explain much, but Alex decided not to press further. After all, he needed the money, and this job sounded like it paid well. So he shrugged and agreed. "All right, show me what needs doing," he said, standing up. The twins led him to a back room filled with strange gadgets and old machines. The walls were lined with shelves full of tools, strange parts, and objects he couldn't even identify. It was clear they'd been working on something, though he had no idea what. Lena pointed to a small broken generator on the left side of the table. "Fix this," she said, handing him a few tools. At the same time, Lyra pointed to a large screen that flickered on the right side of the table. "And repair the screen's wiring," she added. Alex took a deep breath, picked up the tools, and got to work. It was challenging, switching his focus between the 2 tasks. Every time he tried to focus on one job, he felt a strange pressure to work on the other. The twins watched him the entire time, standing silently in the corner of the room, their eyes never leaving him. Alex could feel their gaze, intense and unsettling. Every time he looked up, they were standing there, their expressions unreadable. He continued working, switching between fixing the generator and rewiring the screen, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a repair job. The tasks seemed simple enough, but there was something about the twins and the way they watched him that felt strange. It was like they were testing him, but he didn't know why. After about an hour, he finished both tasks and set the tools down, feeling a bit worn out. "All right, I think that should do it," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. The twins stepped forward, inspecting his work closely. They nodded approvingly, and for the first time, Alex saw a slight smile on their faces. "Good," Lena said. "You did well," Lyra added, her voice soft. Just as he was about to ask more questions, Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. "There will be more tasks tomorrow," she said quietly. Alex stared at them, surprised. More tasks, and I'll need to do them both at the same time again. The twins nodded. Yes, said Lyra. We need to see if you're the right one. The right one? For what? Alex asked, his curiosity growing. But the twins simply turned and walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was getting pulled into something far bigger than he'd expected. And as he left the house that night, he knew one thing for sure. These twins were hiding something, and he was determined to find out what it was. The odd tasks start. The next morning, Alex returned to the twins' house, feeling both curious and uneasy. The strange request from yesterday had left him with many questions. Who were these twins, and why did they need him to work with both hands at once? And what did they mean by calling him the right one? As he stepped into the house, he found Lena and Lyra waiting for him in the same room, surrounded by strange gadgets and old machines. Their green eyes seemed even sharper today, watching his every move. They greeted him with their usual calm expressions, but there was a hint of excitement in their eyes. Are you ready for today's tasks? Lena asked. Alex nodded. Yes, I'm ready. What do I need to do? Lyra walked over to a table on the left side of the room, where a strange device sat. It was small and box-shaped, with wires sticking out of every side. She handed him a pair of pliers and pointed to a tangled mess of wires. This needs to be untangled and reconnected in a specific order, she said. Alex nodded, taking the pliers. He had worked on complex wiring before, so this didn't seem too hard. But as he reached for the wires, he heard Lena clear her throat behind him. Wait, she said, drawing his attention to the other side of the room. She stood beside a large metal panel covered with switches and buttons. While you're working on the wires, I need you to fix this control panel too. Some switches are loose, and the buttons aren't working. Alex stared at both tasks, realizing he would need to do them at the same time again. You want me to do both at once, just like yesterday? Yes, Lyra replied, her voice calm. It's important that you keep switching between them. Alex sighed, taking a deep breath. All right, I'll give it my best. He set to work, gripping the pliers in one hand and starting to untangle the wires with his left hand, while using a screwdriver in his right to tighten the switches on the control panel. It was challenging, even more so than yesterday. Every time he focused too long on one task, he felt that strange pressure again, like he was being pulled toward the other task. It was almost as if the twins had some invisible force that guided him. As he worked, the twins stood silently nearby, watching him closely. They didn't say a word, but Alex could feel their gaze. He glanced up once and noticed them sharing a look, a silent understanding passing between them. After a while, Alex felt a strange sensation. It was hard to describe, but it was as if his mind was splitting in two, one part focused on the wires and the other on the control panel. He was working on both tasks almost automatically, his hands moving on their own. It felt eerie but somehow natural, as if he'd done this 1,000 times before. Good, Lena said suddenly, breaking the silence. You're doing well. Lyra nodded. Yes, better than we expected. The way she said other things made Alex even more curious. But he nodded, not wanting to push her too much. Got it, he said, backing away from the door. Lena turned and led him to the workshop, where Lyra was waiting. They handed him tools, and once again he found himself working on 2 different tasks, one with each hand. But this time, his thoughts kept drifting back to that dark room and what it might hold. After a few hours, Lena and Lyra went to another part of the house, leaving him alone to finish up. This was his chance. Moving quickly, he walked back to the narrow door and slipped inside. The room was dimly lit, with shelves filled with dusty books, strange objects, and piles of old documents. It looked like a storage room, but there was something eerie about it. He began looking through the documents, Feeling a bit guilty but knowing he had to understand what he was getting into, he found old notes, scientific papers, and handwritten letters, most of them in a language he couldn't read. But a few pages were in English, and he skimmed them eagerly. One paper caught his eye. It mentioned something called Project Gemini. As he read, Alex felt a chill. Project Gemini was an experiment to create a powerful psychic bond between two people. The document explained that twins with a strong bond could share thoughts, emotions, and even abilities. It talked about using this bond to control or protect people with unusual skills. Just then, he heard footsteps in the hallway. Heart racing, he quickly stuffed the paper into his pocket and slipped out of the room, just in time. He pretended to be working as Lena and Lyra walked back in, unaware of what he'd just discovered. "Everything going well, Alex?" Lyra asked, her voice calm but watchful. Yeah," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just finishing up here." The twins nodded and turned to discuss something quietly. Alex felt a wave of relief, but knew he needed to read the rest of the document later. As he continued working, he couldn't help glancing at the twins. Were they really part of this experiment? Were they somehow more than human? After finishing the tasks, he left the house, anxious to study the document in private. Once he got back to his small apartment, he pulled the paper out and read it carefully. It described how the bond between twins could create a kind of shared energy, almost like a force that could connect them to others. It mentioned that twins with this bond could sense danger and protect themselves, and sometimes even communicate without speaking. Alex felt a shiver run through him. This explained a lot. The twins' strange connection, the way they seemed to know what he was thinking, and the energy he felt when he worked with them. But the paper also had a warning. If the bond was strained too far, it could break, causing serious harm to both twins. He stared at the paper, feeling a mixture of awe and fear. If Lena and Lyra were part of Project Gemini, they had powers far beyond what he'd imagined. But why were they using these powers for simple repair tasks? What were they really testing? The next day, when he returned to the house, he couldn't hide his curiosity anymore. He looked at the twins, his voice steady but firm. "I found some old papers yesterday," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Something about Project Gemini." The twins exchanged a quick, intense glance and then looked back at him. For the first time, Alex saw a hint of fear in their eyes. "You weren't supposed to find that," Lena said softly. Alex took a deep breath. "I just want to know what's really going on here. Why are you testing me? And what does Project Gemini have to do with it?" Lyra looked away, but Lena stepped forward, her face serious. "All right, Alex," she said. "It's time you know the truth." She explained that they'd been part of an experiment to protect people with special skills. Their bond gave them unique powers, but they needed someone who could help them control it. The tasks they'd given him were tests to see if he could handle working with their shared energy. "But there's more," Lena added. "There's a threat coming, one that we can't face alone. That's why we need you." Alex stared at them, feeling both honored and afraid. Whatever he'd gotten himself into, he knew there was no turning back now. And as he looked into the twins' eyes, he realized he was now part of their strange and dangerous world. Psychic connections. The revelation about Project Gemini left Alex feeling both amazed and uneasy. The twins were far from ordinary. They were part of a secret experiment that had granted them strange, powerful abilities. Their connection was psychic, bound by an energy he couldn't fully understand. And somehow, he was now becoming a part of it. The next day, as Alex stepped into the house, he felt a strange pull, almost like an invisible thread drawing him toward the twins. They were waiting for him in the workshop, as usual, standing side by side with their eyes focused and serious. "Are you ready for today's task?" Lena asked, her voice softer than usual. Alex nodded, though he couldn't shake off his nervousness. "I'm ready, but I need to understand more about this connection you keep talking about." The twins exchanged a look. Lyra gave a small nod, and Lina took a step forward. "It's not easy to explain," she said, "but we'll show you. Today's task is different. It's not about fixing machines or wiring." Alex felt his pulse quicken. "Then, what is it about?" Lyra motioned for him to sit on a small bench in the corner. "This time, it's about connecting your mind to ours." "Wait," Alex said, surprised. "How do I connect my mind to yours?" The twins sat on either side of him, close enough that he could feel their warmth. They each took one of his hands, their grips firm but gentle. "Close your eyes," Lina instructed. Feeling both curious and apprehensive, Alex did as they asked. He closed his eyes, feeling their hands in his, and tried to relax. "Just listen to our voices," Lyra whispered, "and let go of any doubts." At first, there was only silence. Then, slowly, he began to feel something unusual, a faint humming sound that seemed to come from inside his own mind. It was soft at first, but it grew louder, like a low, steady beat. Then he started seeing flashes of images, forests, mountains, and stars in the sky. It felt like he was floating, yet fully aware of the twins beside him. "You're starting to feel it," Lena's voice echoed in his mind, although he could no longer tell if she was actually speaking or if he was just hearing her thoughts. "Yes, you're almost there," came Lyra's voice. The two voices seemed to blend together, creating a harmony that felt both strange and comforting. Alex felt his mind open in a way he'd never experienced before. Thoughts that weren't his own began to flow in, memories, emotions, and fragments of images he couldn't recognize. He saw a memory of the twins as children, laughing together in a meadow. He felt their bond, deep and unbreakable, a bond that made them inseparable. The sensation was overwhelming, and he felt his heart pound as he realized he was sharing their lives, their emotions, their fears. But then he felt something else, a shadow that lurked at the edge of their connection. It was dark, cold, and full of anger, watching them from a distance. He could feel its hatred and its hunger for destruction. He recoiled, gasping as he broke out of the trance and opened his eyes, pulling his hands away from the twins. What was that?" he asked, breathless. There was something dark. The twins looked at each other, their faces serious. Lina spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's what we're trying to protect ourselves from. That's why we need your help." Lyra nodded, her green eyes filled with worry. "The psychic bond we share helps us sense danger, but it also makes us a target. There's a force, a dark presence, that has been hunting us ever since Project Gemini ended." Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Why me? Why do you need me to help you face this darkness?" Lina gave him a gentle smile. "Because your mind is different, Alex. When you work on two tasks at once, your brain creates a unique energy flow. That energy syncs with ours, helping us strengthen our bond. With you, we might be able to protect ourselves from the darkness." Alex nodded, feeling a mix of determination and fear. He'd never been part of anything like this, but he felt a strange loyalty toward the twins. He couldn't leave them to face this threat alone. "So, what do I need to do?" he asked, his voice steady. The twins looked at each other, relief and hope in their eyes. "We need to keep practicing," Lyra explained. "Each time we connect with you, the bond will grow stronger. And when the darkness comes, we'll be ready to face it together." They began the task again, holding his hands as they guided him back into the connection. This time, Alex was ready. He opened his mind fully, letting their thoughts and feelings flow into him. He could feel their strength, their courage, and the powerful bond that held them together. For hours, they practiced, diving deeper into their shared consciousness. With each connection, Alex felt himself becoming more attuned to their energy. He could sense their thoughts without words, understand their feelings without explanations. It was like they were becoming one, a trio bound by a psychic link that went beyond anything he'd ever experienced. But in the background, he could still feel that dark shadow, lurking and watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Each time they connected, it seemed to grow closer, like it was drawn to their energy. Alex could feel its cold presence creeping into the edges of their minds, its hatred more intense with every session. Yet he didn't pull away. He knew that whatever this darkness was, he would face it with the twins. And as they finally ended the session, all three exhausted but stronger, he realized something important. He was no longer just helping them. He was a part of them now, bound by a connection that went beyond words. The twins looked at him, their expressions full of trust, and for the first time, Alex felt ready. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The hidden plan. The days passed, and Alex found himself growing more comfortable with the twins. They practiced connecting their minds daily, deepening their bond. Each session revealed more of their emotions and thoughts, but the dark shadow remained a constant threat, always lurking just beyond reach. One evening, as they gathered in the workshop, Alex noticed the twins whispering to each other. Their expressions were serious, and he felt a wave of concern wash over him. He sat on the edge of a bench, waiting for them to explain. "Alex," Lena finally said, her voice calm but firm, "we need to talk about the plan." "What plan?" Alex asked, confusion flooding his mind. He hadn't been aware there was a specific plan in place. Lyra stepped forward, her green eyes meeting his. "We've been working on strengthening our bond, but now we need to focus on what comes next. The darkness we felt is getting closer. We need to be ready." Alex nodded, his heart racing. "Okay, but how do we prepare for something like that? What exactly is this darkness?" Lena exchanged a glance with Lyra before answering. "We believe it's a being created from the failed experiments of Project Gemini. It's filled with anger and seeks to destroy those who have the bond we share. We must find a way to protect ourselves before it attacks." "Protect ourselves how?" Alex pressed, leaning forward. "What do you want me to do?" "We need to find the source of the darkness," Lyra said, her voice steady. "There's a hidden place in the city where the energy from Project Gemini still lingers. It's where the experiments were done, and we believe the darkness is drawn to that energy. If we can locate it, we can confront it." Alex took a deep breath, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. "And how do we find this place?" Lena smiled slightly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "We can use our connection. We will link our minds together and let the energy guide us. But we'll need your focus to make it work." Alex nodded, determination filling him. "I'm ready. Let's do this." They set up a space in the workshop, pushing aside tools and machines to create a small circle. The twins sat on either side of him again, taking his hands. As they closed their eyes, Alex felt the familiar energy begin to pulse between them. "Just relax and trust the bond," Lyra whispered. The humming sound filled his mind once more, and Alex closed his eyes, focusing on the connection they shared. He felt their emotions, Lena's determination and Lyra's calmness mixed with a hint of fear. He pushed his own feelings of anxiety into the bond, letting it flow between them. Suddenly, a vision appeared. They saw a dark building in the middle of the city, surrounded by an aura of shadow. It was old and crumbling, with broken windows and vines crawling up its sides. Alex felt a chill run through him as he recognized it. The abandoned research facility where Project Gemini had begun. "It's there," he said, opening his eyes. "I can see it." The twins exchanged looks of determination. "Then that's where we need to go," Lena said. "But we must be careful. The darkness may be waiting for us." After preparing for their journey, they headed out into the night. The city was quiet, the streets lit only by flickering streetlights. Alex felt the energy between him and the twins, guiding them toward the building. As they walked, he could sense the darkness growing closer, like a predator stalking its prey. When they arrived at the facility, it loomed before them, tall and foreboding. The entrance was covered in shadows, and a chill ran down Alex's spine. He hesitated for a moment, but the twins squeezed his hands reassuringly. "Remember the bond," Lyra said softly. "We're stronger together." Together, they stepped inside, the door creaking loudly as they entered. The air was heavy with dust and silence. Broken equipment lay scattered across the floor, remnants of the experiments that had once taken place here. As they moved deeper into the building, Alex felt the darkness wrapping around them like a thick fog. He could hear whispers in his mind, trying to pull him apart. The connection with the twins was strong, but he struggled to keep his focus. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room, and shadows flickered along the walls. The air crackled with energy, and Alex could feel the darkness watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "We need to find the source," Lena urged, her voice steady. "It's somewhere in this building." They pressed on, moving through dark hallways filled with broken glass and rusted machinery. The deeper they went, the stronger the darkness became. Alex could feel it wrapping around his mind, trying to break the bond they had formed. Then they entered a large room, and Alex's heart sank. In the center was a twisted, dark form, shifting and writhing like a living shadow. It was the embodiment of everything they had feared. "It's here," Lyra shouted, but before they could react, the dark presence lunged at them, filling the room with an icy grip. Alex closed his eyes and focused on the bond he shared with the twins. "We can do this," he shouted, forcing his voice through the darkness. Together, the twins squeezed his hands tighter, their energy merging with his. The warmth of their connection pushed back against the cold. The darkness shrieked, a terrible sound that echoed in his mind. "Focus," Lena cried. "Let the bond protect us." With that, they pushed forward, using their combined energy to confront the dark entity. They had come too far to back down now. The hidden plan was in motion, and they were ready to face whatever came next. Into the heart of danger, the dark entity loomed before Alex, Lena, and Lyra, a swirling mass of shadows that flickered and twisted like smoke. Its presence felt heavy, pressing down on them, trying to break their bond. Alex's heart raced as he fought against the cold dread that filled the room. This was the moment they had prepared for, but facing this darkness felt more daunting than he had imagined. "We can't let it overpower us," Lena shouted, her voice strong. "Focus on the bond." Alex felt the warmth of the twins' hands in his, grounding him in the chaos. He took a deep breath, pushing back against the fear. "Together," he yelled, determination flooding his voice. As the darkness surged toward them, Alex concentrated on the connection they had formed. He could feel their energy, their strength, weaving together into a protective shield around them. The darkness hit the barrier, sending a shockwave through the air, but they stood firm. "Feel the bond," Lyra urged. "Let it grow stronger." Alex closed his eyes and let the energy flow through him. He focused on the memories they had shared, the laughter, the trust, and the unity that had formed between them. The bond was like a bright light against the consuming shadows, pushing back against the darkness that sought to engulf them. Suddenly, the entity screamed, a sound that echoed in the vast room. It writhed in anger, trying to break through their defenses. Alex felt the strain of holding the bond, but he didn't let go. He pushed harder, letting the twins' energy flow into him. "Now," Lena shouted, "let's attack." With their minds linked, they launched a wave of energy toward the dark figure. The light exploded from their bond, bright and powerful, striking the entity directly. It howled in rage, its form flickering as if it were struggling against the force. The darkness lashed out, sending tendrils of shadow towards them, but they were ready. Alex felt the power of the twins' connection amplifying his own. Together, they created a stronger shield, absorbing the attacks and redirecting the energy back at the darkness. The room shook as their energies collided. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the broken machinery rattled around them. They stood together, united against the threat. But the darkness was relentless. It coiled around their shield, trying to find a weakness. "We need to find its core," Lyra shouted. "That's where its power lies." "Where is it?" Alex gasped, straining to keep the bond steady. Lena closed her eyes, focusing. "I can sense it. It's at the center of the darkness, where all its energy is concentrated." Alex nodded, trying to keep the bond strong. "Let's move closer. We can reach it together." The three of them took a step forward, pushing through the shadows. The darkness lashed out, trying to pull them back, but Alex held on tight to the twins. They advanced, forming a stronger bond with each step. As they neared the heart of the darkness, Alex could see it more clearly. It was a swirling mass of shadow, pulsating with dark energy, like a black hole threatening to consume everything around it. It was terrifying, but he felt a flicker of hope. They were getting closer. "Now," Lena yelled, raising her hands. "We need to strike hard." With a burst of energy, they directed their bond toward the core of the darkness. The light exploded from them, filling the room with a brilliant glow that pushed against the shadows. Alex could feel the warmth spreading through him, igniting his courage. But as the light hit the core, the darkness roared, growing larger and more chaotic. "You cannot defeat me," it screamed, its voice echoing like thunder. "I am born from the very experiments that created you." Alex felt the weight of its words. This creature was a part of Project Gemini, a twisted reflection of their own powers. But he couldn't let fear control him. "We're stronger than you," he shouted back, his voice ringing with defiance. "You won't win." With a final push, they focused all their energy into the light, creating a powerful beam that surged toward the heart of the darkness. The shadows twisted and screamed, but they pressed on, uniting their strength. The energy from their bond grew brighter, flooding the room with light. Suddenly, there was an explosion of light as the beam struck the dark core. It shattered, sending a wave of energy rippling through the room. The darkness roared in agony, its form collapsing in on itself. Alex felt a surge of triumph as the shadows began to dissipate, turning to mist and evaporating into the air. He could sense the dark entity losing its grip, its power fading. Together, they had broken the bond it held over them. As the last remnants of darkness vanished, the room fell silent. Alex opened his eyes, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. The bond with the twins was still strong, and he could sense their relief and joy. "We did it!" Lena exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. "We defeated it." Lyra nodded, her smile wide. "We worked together, just like we said we would." Alex felt a wave of happiness wash over him. They had faced their fears and come out stronger. But in the back of his mind, he knew this victory was only the beginning. The shadows might have been defeated, but the memory of the darkness lingered. They had to remain vigilant, for there would always be new challenges ahead. As they left the facility, hand in hand, Alex looked at the twins. "What's next for us?" he asked, a sense of purpose filling him. Lena smiled, determination in her eyes. "We'll continue to grow our bond and be ready for whatever comes next. Together, we can face anything." And in that moment, Alex felt a sense of belonging. He wasn't just a helper anymore. He was part of their team, part of a family forged in the fires of danger. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The final battle. The days after their victory over the darkness were filled with hope. Alex, Lena, and Lyra had formed a strong bond, working together to understand their powers and prepare for any new threats. They knew the darkness could return, and they needed to be ready. But one evening, as they sat in the workshop, a chill filled the air. Alex glanced at the twins, who were both silent and tense. "What's wrong?" he asked, sensing something was off. "I can feel it," Lyra said softly. The darkness is back. It's stronger than before. Lena nodded, her expression serious. We need to act fast. It won't be long before it finds us again. Alex felt a wave of fear wash over him. What do we do? How can we fight it if it's stronger? We need to draw it out, Lena explained. If we can confront it head-on, we might be able to finish this for good. How do we do that? Alex asked, his heart racing. We'll use our bond to lure it, Lyra suggested. We'll create a connection that it can't resist. Once it shows itself, we can fight together. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the plan. Okay, let's do it. They set up a trap in the center of the workshop. The twins focused on their powers, creating a pulsating energy field that glowed brightly. They linked their hands, forming a circle around Alex, who stood at the center, feeling both nervous and excited. Just stay close to us, Lena instructed. We'll keep the bond strong. The energy pulsed around them, and Alex felt the familiar warmth of the twins' presence. They closed their eyes, and he could sense their determination. Together, they called out to the darkness, challenging it to come forth. Show yourself. Alex shouted, his voice echoing in the stillness. We're ready for you. Moments passed, and the air grew thick with tension. Then, without warning, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lights and plunging them into darkness. The shadows twisted and coiled, forming a familiar shape, the dark entity they had faced before. You think you can defeat me again, it hissed, its voice like ice. I am stronger now. The darkness surged toward them, and Alex felt its coldness seep into his bones. But he stood tall, reminding himself of the bond they had created. We're not afraid of you, he shouted. With a roar, the darkness lunged at them, its shadowy tendrils reaching out to grasp them. Alex felt the pull, but the twins held tight, their energy flaring bright. Now, Lena yelled, and together they unleashed a powerful wave of light from their bond, pushing back against the darkness. The room exploded with energy, and the shadows recoiled, screaming in fury. You cannot stop me, the entity cried, but Alex felt the tides beginning to turn. The warmth of their bond enveloped him, and he could feel the twins' strength supporting him. Keep pushing, Lyra urged, her voice fierce. We have to find its core. With every ounce of strength they had, they focused their energy on the dark form. The light grew brighter, illuminating the shadows and revealing the heart of the darkness. It pulsed at the center, a swirling mass of anger and despair. Together, Alex shouted, Let's finish this.